John Norman, Elena Pacenti, Seda Evis. I'm Dave Conover, and we are here presenting design-driven innovation stories from our region on behalf of the Design Forward Alliance. Thank you for attending. The Design Forward Alliance is a local nonprofit organization whose mission is to promote human-centered design as a tool to advance the San Diego-Tijuana region as a premier city for business, education, and enjoyment. This session today has two objectives. First, DFA, or the Design Forward Alliance, has asked 4 organizations to showcase how design thinking energizes the San Diego-Tijuana region. Human-centered design, not just by professionals, but by the creative spirit of everyday citizens. And second, DFA wants the San Diego-Tijuana region to be recognized as a World Design Capital in 2024. Both the mayors of San Diego and Tijuana and the current candidates, along with other organizations, have agreed to participate. The World Design Organization recognizes cities for their effective use of design to drive economic, social, cultural, and environmental development. At the end of this presentation, we ask you to submit your stories to be included in the World Design Capital application. Remember, you don't need to be a trained professional to be creative and inspiring. Everyone can be a designer. Everyone makes design decisions daily. Visit designforwardsd.com and select stories to submit. That's designforwardsd.com. Before I hand it over to DFA board member Elena Pacenti, please remember, mute your audio, enter your questions in the chat room, and most importantly, submit your stories. Thank you. Take it away, Elena.
Thank you, Dave. I was trying to figure out if we were recording. Apparently, there's more people recording. I don't know if it's possible. So thank you for all the participants to attend this session. Thanks, Dave, for the introduction. Thanks to the fellow board members of DFA Alliance. And so when we started reaching and researching on the stories from our region, we realized that the human-centered design and design-driven innovation is happening around us in many different ways and forms. And we believe that collecting these stories and showing them all together will both make them more visible and is even stronger and powerful. We believe that San Diego can be seen as a place where design-driven innovation happens at the international level, and that San Diego and Tijuana region can be some reference, a unique place to attract attention in this direction. Today, we are presenting 4 amazing stories, and most of them centered on the community aspect and some of them on education, and co-creation aspect. But we hope that these stories will inspire you. These are just examples of what we are looking for. And we hope that we will encourage you to submit more of these stories, and that can belong to business and startups and government initiative and planning, public sector, community, and education in general. The first of today's stories is told by Seda Evis, and it is about a community project involving older people in Chula Vista and in script French. Seda is originally from Turkey. She studied urban design and planning in Ankara. She took her MBA in San Diego and then worked in New York as design and business strategist and consultant. And she now very recently moved back to San Diego. Yes. So without no further ado, I pass to Seda the stage.
Thank you, Elena, about this beautiful introduction. And I'm super happy to be here with you to tell you about co-designing with older people in Chula Vista in San Diego and across the United States. But so I'm Seda Evis. I am the director of strategy for a New York-based design firm, Bursell & Sec. I'm a designer, strategist, triathlete, which I started here in San Diego. And as Elena said, I'm a USD grad. And this is actually, I'm home again in a way. I came to San Diego from Istanbul as a grad student. And then I did my short stint, shorter in New York for about 7.5 years. And then now I'm back. So I'm delighted to tell you a regional story, a regional design and innovation story. So when we think of design, typically the first thing that comes to our mind is products, you know, the features, the shape, the color, which is very, of course, there, but we can also design services and experiences and process and even design a way to engage with community. And this is the co-designing with older adults has really incorporated all of these things. So a little bit of an origin story of why we started this work. We're living longer today, about 8,000 days, which makes up about 22 years. So our connection to our families and work and purpose and families and communities is even more vital with this extended life. And we set out to understand what older adults today, older Americans today want from life, so we can innovate for these 55 million older adults, supported by a grant from the SCAN Foundation, a Long Beach organization, and the resulting Alive Ventures out of that. So for that, we traveled around the States, including San Diego, and we did, I'm going to show you a quick film about, can you hear the sound? Do you hear the sound?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. A snapshot from the workshops, and so we went to metropolitans like New York, LA, rural towns in Mississippi, and done these collaborative workshops to understand what life and love is.
I think this was the most enjoyable thing I've done in such a long time.
So that was just one of our members here, participants, and we touched on topics like love, work, family and friendships, and what vitality means. And so in our senior community in Chula Vista, we co-designed the friendship we loved, and our community there told us that they're looking for fresh friendships as the structures kind of yield its, you know, as no longer, you know, work exists or people move away. So how do we make fresh friendships in later in life? And Skip here is telling us, ask for help. And to go forward, you have to put aside your pride. Christine told us that you got to join a community or create one of your own, and you got to involve in meaningful way. In San Diego, in the northern part, we talked about what retirement gig is. What does that really mean? What is work and purpose in retirement? And Bill told us you got to start something new, and starting something new feels like you're young again. And Kathy told us you need to Kathy told us a lot of things, but so let's, so one of the main things about what we learned was that if you want to understand what we want, think no further than what you want. So that was our main topic and takeaway from all these sessions. So it really centered around meaningful experiences, new experiences of love, vitality, work, and friendships, and what is needed to get them could be different for older adults, but these are still the same wants that you and I and others are looking for. So love, you know, reinventing how we find love in later life, rethinking of what purpose and work is in a different way, and what does that turn into in retirement gig, or meaningfully shape and shift the meaning of vitality and health is what they told us. And finally, creating new communities and new friendships and fresh friendships to be able to make attachment to all of these other things, love, work, and vitality. So the best part is you can co-design too. Here's me in Mississippi and actually in New York doing co-design, because I led writing this co-design kit and facilitators guide along with my team to make sure that anyone who, and you don't have to be a designer, that you can develop a community workshop, practice it, and find people and really create or bond with your community around the topic that you want to work on, change, and learn what they want. So this is our report, the Insights report across the United States. But here's some of the links, and I'll put those in the chat box, and thank you.
Thank you, Seda.
Thank you, Seda, for the speed presentation. You'll see that all studies will be presented in 5 minutes to leave a little bit of time for discussion.
All right, I'll put the links in the chat box too, so feel free to check out.
So let me start by asking a question. And to the audience, the 4 people from Design Forward Association who will be a panel always asking questions for 5 minutes after each of the talks. And after we're all finished with the 4 speakers and the sessions, then we'll look at the questions from the audience in the chat. So one of the interesting things that you did, Seda, is that you prepared a toolkit so that anybody can read this code toolkit and create and collect their own stories. So tell us a little bit more about the toolkit. I know they can get it through one of the URLs you posted, but yeah, what does it take to learn how to do this?
So it's one of those things where how can we make this complex, sometimes complex job of facilitation and learning on the spot easier and simpler, so that you don't have to be a trained designer or trained facilitator to simply use a design process to get in touch with the people that you're interested in, like your community, right? We give a framework of what are some of the things you need to be able to put a workshop together. Everything from materials to what sort of a room you may want. Of course, this was pre-COVID, but you can certainly do this online. And we have a content, so a ready content for you that you just sort of fill in the blanks for the topic that you're interested in. And even as a way to, well, now the workshop is finished. What do I do with all this information? So it's a very step-by-step a way of dissecting how one can really put a workshop together. It's better than IKEA instruction booklets, let me tell you.
It's interesting that you mentioned that it's like, there is a parallel in a sense. Saida, what do you think was one of the most interesting outcomes of this workshop, and what stayed in the community in terms of results of some of these experiences?
So one of the most interesting things were, we all go into projects or this kind of work with our preconceptions about what older life is, or older life experiences, especially if you're not one that's living it, right? So I think empathizing with older life through these kinds of immersive experiences has actually enriched our life so much more than, let's say, designing a potato peeler, right? And there's nothing wrong with designing potato peelers, by the way. They're very, very important. But so what we learned was this, idea of how can things that we want be same, but how we meet them would be different, and why aren't innovations out there for the, let's say, the 65 plus market? Why aren't entrepreneurs interested in this market as much as we see potential in? The other thing that I think stayed with the community, and we're seeing that as a design studio, we now have hundreds of people around the country who've participated in these workshops. And in fact, during the beginning of the COVID, we have done multiple virtual workshops and sort of like these Zoom meetings to get in touch and be involved. And it's phenomenal to see how many people were able to reconnect with this idea of designing and design process and designing life.
Thank you, Saida. We have about 1 minute left until you get to introduce the next presentation.
Right.
So whatever you'd like to do, or if anybody else has a question at all.
Yeah, maybe any participant questions?
No.
No? Okay.
At the end.
At the
Yeah,
end, okay, all right.
Put your questions in the chat.
Okay, well,
Later on.
I can introduce Andy if, and that'll give us a little bit ahead.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm welcoming Andy Sturm. He comes to us from Casa Familiar, and his role there is public vitality facilitator. And what he does is connects Casa's arts and culture, social entrepreneurship, and community development work with a special focus on the creation of San Isidro's first community land trust. I'm super happy that you're here, Andy, and you can take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah, for that and for your presentation. That was actually really interesting for me and a lot of the work we do here. So maybe we need to chat.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I'm going to jump right in, and I'll start with a short intro to Casa Familiar and then myself, and then I'm going to share a video for everyone. So Casa Familiar is a nonprofit based here in San Isidro, which is a small neighborhood of San Diego that, for those of you who aren't from here, is right up against the border with Mexico and Tijuana. Most of our services are delivered in San Isidro, but we serve people from Tijuana all the way up to almost downtown San Diego and beyond in different ways. We're about 40 people, most of whom grew up in San Isidro or nearby. And Casa has been around for almost 50 years, starting off organizing farm workers and slowly expanding services until where we are now. And the way we describe our mission now is allowing the dignity, power, and worth within individuals and families to flourish by enhancing quality of life through education, advocacy, service programming, arts and culture, housing, and community economic development. Which is a mouthful, but that's the best way we can do to explain everything. My background is in architecture and art, and with a focus on public interest design and socially engaged art practice in the public realm. Sada has already mentioned my role, so I'll leave that at that, but I have two beliefs that kind of guide me and work well with Casa, which is that I believe that our cities and public institutions need to be reshaped into more just, equitable, and interesting forms. And I believe that the complex issues of our current moment require responses that are structural, intersectional, and developed with those who are most affected by them. And that's kind of what I was brought here to do with CASA. I've known CASA since about 2006, although I didn't grow up here, and I've been working full time for about a year now. I'm going to take over the screen and share a video, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of context for it. So let me do the technical part first. Share screen. Okay. So let me, oops. Okay. So the video is mostly self-explanatory, but I just want to make some comments to ground us and just share that it's also built on years of research initiated by Casa Familiar about the ongoing issue of air pollution created by cars as they wait to cross the border here in San Isidro and in Tijuana. Before COVID, wait times for cars averaged between 30 minutes and 2 hours. But last week, for example, they spiked up to 10 hours because Border Patrol decided to close down all the lanes except one in an attempt to punish people for crossing too much. So it's safe to say this issue is ongoing and dynamic. In the project, I worked with 11 young people from San Isidro, and we were able to pay them as apprentices to work with me. Together, we learned from CASA, we learned from researchers at San Diego State, and from a local activist about the air pollution issue. And then we shared that with their neighbors and friends, the apprentices' neighbors and friends, and then heard back from them about their health issues related to that, which include high levels of asthma, COPD, etc. And then we worked with local activist Guillermo Conejo to gather polluted fruit from his trees, and we use those to make paintings. And so that's kind of what the video is about, is a way to kind of make the issue more tangible to people, because even though it's happening all the time, it's kind of like the frog in the boiling water where nobody knows that they're boiling, or very few do. So here we go.
There's no sound on this video, Andy, if you want to try and, or Elena.
I cannot do anything. So
Andy
yeah.
was going to narrate. That was the whole point. Andy, you're going to tell us the story.
Is it, the sound's not coming through?
No, it is
It's not. Here's what I've discovered. When you have your earpieces, audience will not hear. So maybe now
Sounds
try.
great to you, right?
Yeah, it sounds lovely to me. Sorry about that. Well, I can.
To the way, but there it is.
Now we can hear.
now we can hear.
So sorry. And this is actually what the apprentice was showing you was the pollution that had piled up on the grapefruit, and because the oils of the grapefruit kind of attract the pollution and hold it until there's like a really hard rain, so we were able to harvest it. And this is just a quick clip showing the air monitoring system that we had put together with San Diego State, which is still in use right now. So we're still gathering data. And it's spread throughout rooftops all over San Ysidro and in Tijuana as well. So this is kind of the culmination as the apprentices were revealing the words that they got through their interactions with the community. And what you're seeing is the actual pollution that's adhered to the canvases wherever there wasn't a mask, basically.
For 18 years, this place was clean, very clean. The fruit didn't have any stains, and I was happy.
I'd like to jump in just because we're a couple minutes behind, but I want to give you enough time, Andy, to answer one of the questions from Don, Elena, or Seda before we present the next one. Thank you. I think, as we said this morning, quite compelling. We should find out more if you've got your slide with your address on it.
Yeah, I was having technical issues with that, so I'm just going to put them in the chat.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. This is amazing. And it's just one bit of what you guys doing down there at Casa Familiar. Don, you have a question?
What is the main impact on the community? So it's really a very impressive way of demonstrating the enormity of the pollution on the plants themselves. So does this have any impact on
the video, you know, it helped us communicate it a lot with our local folks and trying to get, the issue is that the federal government doesn't really care about what's happening. And so we continue to advocate for speeding up the time and et cetera, but it hasn't really moved a lot of folks in that regard. What it has helped us do is work locally to help make people more aware of the issue. So people surprisingly actually had a disconnect between health issues and what was causing it. And so the goal in this and then in our other work is by creating more and more awareness of what's of those two things being connected, we can create more community organizing around putting pressure to try to ameliorate the issue. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is sort of building that, building that community organizing based on helping people connect that the health issues are actually related to something external. It's not them, it's not the way they're living their lives, it's because they live near this thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, please, if you have any questions, put it in the chat. I'll try my best to capture them all. And I want to find out more from you when we get more of a chance rather than 1 hour. So let's go to the next presentation. And again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.
So the next presentation is some work we did at UC San Diego. In part because UC San Diego is located in La Jolla, which is pretty far away, especially if you try to drive it from downtown San Diego and for that matter from San Ysidro. But there's a trolley that goes from San Ysidro up to San Diego, and that trolley line is now being extended up into the campus. And so that trolley will open in roughly November of 2021, maybe 13, 14 months from now. But the campus is huge. And so when somebody gets out of a trolley on the western side of the campus, the eastern side of the campus, and they need to go to buildings on the west, which might be in the northwest or the southwest, how do they do it? It's a long way to go. It could be a mile or two. So we worked with SANDAG, the San Diego area government, and the transportation people. And what we did is we asked the students, how would you solve this problem? And so I'm here to tell you, to introduce to you Stephanie Ellsworth and Eric Mumm, who are two students, both in the design lab, but also in the program of urban studies and planning. And they ran a designathon, not a hackathon, but it's about design. And we had a huge number of students and subject matter experts and people, but they will tell you the story.
All right, thank you so much for that kind introduction. My name is Eric Mumm. I recently graduated from UC San Diego with a degree in urban studies and planning.
I'm Stephanie, also a recent urban studies and planning graduate, and I currently work at campus planning.
So thank you so much, everyone, for having us here to share our design-driven story. We've really enjoyed the presentations thus far. And we're just here to tell you about one of the most impactful experiences of our college years, which was the 2019 Pepper Canyon Mobility Hub Designathon. And so as Don mentioned, UC San Diego, along with the region, is really rapidly approaching this transition in regional transportation. The trolley extension that will open in 2021 will provide this light rail connection between UTC, UC San Diego, and downtown, which connects all of the region's major employment hubs and provides new transit options to bring thousands of students, staff, faculty, and visitors to and from the campus.
And SANDAG, our regional planning agency, was working on innovative efforts to engage students and the community in the planning process of these 9 new transit stations. The agency was looking to turn each of these stations into a mobility hub, a place where multiple modes of transportation can come together and create accessible transportation for all. So to do this, SANDAG partnered with the Design Lab, Campus Planning, Young Planners Society, Urban Studies and Planning, and more to host the Pepper Canyon Mobility Hub Designathon on April 6th and 7th, 2019. And over 250 students, staff, faculty, and industry experts gathered with the mission to increase mobility and access for all between the light rail trolley station and the broader UC San Diego campus.
The event was this amazing 2-day design charrette where student participants from different backgrounds and majors from all over the campus, they came together and they proposed ideas that would create a more accessible, more mobile, and more regionally connected campus for future students, faculty, staff, and visitors. And so the creative process was guided by the principles of human-centered design. To first identify the right problems, then to ideate through the problem-solving process, and finally to effectively present solutions. The results were creative and inspiring, with project proposals that ranged from a network of gondolas connecting the corners of the campus to a cultural hub proposed at the station to create a more vibrant pedestrian experience, and to a more accessible micromobility option for those temporarily and permanently differently abled. And that last project was designed by a team of high schoolers.
The participants had a chance to work in an indoor and outdoor environment, and they had easy access to their site, and we gave them guided tours from the architects and access to industry mentors and campus staff who are working on the project. Designathons have really proven to be a great way to involve the community in the planning and design process and promote active citizenship in solving community issues. For students, it also provided them with a great way to expose themselves to real-world problem-solving skills and encourage them to work in teams. Many of our stakeholders involved had such a positive experience that it spurred future designathons and design challenges such as the Designathon 2020, Tactical Urbanism for Street Safety, Design for San Diego's 2020 Civic Design Challenge, and the Urban Design Challenge 2020, the University Center Intermobility Plan.
So bringing together a group of diverse student participants, industry experts, and local stakeholders can fuel innovation and spark partnerships in a unique way. And this can lead staff to think of issues in new lights and allow them to feasibly implement the ideas proposed by participants in the Designathon. There is truly no better problem-solving engine than a Designathon in our eyes. And now we will happily take your questions.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, yes.
Let me ask how this impacted you, because both of you now have graduated and you're both now working in the planning arena. You both have jobs, one at UC San Diego and the other at a local company in downtown San Diego. What was the impact on your life?
I think, oh, go ahead.
I think for me, it just shows the power of bringing people together. And I actually also participated in the Designathon 2019. And I think that the connections I made with people who I may not have been connected with in any other environment really exposed me to thinking about things in new ways, and that there's always a different angle to look at a problem. And so I think that that's kind of the way that it impacted me.
Well, and I'll add to that because I think somebody mentioned earlier the idea that everyone can be a designer. And I think that stood out to me so poignantly at all of the Designathons that I've been a part of. And I think for me going into the urban planning field, this was such a unique way to gather community input and collective brain power. I can't wait to see how I can apply this as I work as a planner regionally.
And how do you think, guys, you were able to impact SANDAG with this experience?
You know, it's a good question. I think SANDAG was surprised by the quality of these proposals and the power of putting all these students in a good work environment. And I think that hopefully to the same degree that it impacted Stephanie and I, it impacted SANDAG in the way that they gather community feedback and, you know, the way that they're putting out their 5 big moves these days, I feel is more collecting actual community ideas rather than just asking for feedback on the ideas of SANDAG, if that kind of makes sense. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, you know, placemaking was something that came out as such a major theme of the Designathon that I think the campus and SANDAG both took that very seriously. And I think that SANDAG has really realized like how important it is, the user experience and how important that is in all the planning work that they do. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eric and Stephanie.
Of course, thank you.
Great presentation. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our 4th and final presentation today from Dr. Sean T. Lozier. Sean is the Chief Executive Officer of Urban Discovery Schools, an innovative school system in downtown San Diego in partnership with UCSD Extension and the Design Lab. Sean is an American Educational Research Association awarded scholarly practitioner in the field of action, research, and design thinking. Last year, Sean was named one of 16 worldwide recipients of the TED Innovative Educators Award. Thank you, Sean. Take it away.
Thank you kindly, Dave, for your introduction, and it's such a privilege to be here with all of the presenters and panelists today. Today I am presenting on behalf of Urban Discovery Schools, and the story we want to share is about the power of human-centered design and design thinking in a crisis response of epic proportion. Before we get into that, just a brief background on Urban Discovery Schools. Urban Discovery Schools is a school system that is 12 years old, founded by community need in a design process. And I want to welcome Madeline Levine, who's our board president and also a lead designer championing the design world capital, and she's on the line today. And we should acknowledge that work as part of a design thinking approach to developing schools. So design thinking has been part of who we are at Urban Discovery Schools for well over a decade. But it really has taken front and center approaches over the last 4 years, 5 years, as we reached out and began developing high school structures and new ways for teachers to innovate. Now, Urban Discovery Schools is located downtown, as we indicated earlier. We're on 14th Street and on Park Boulevard, where we have a primary education site and a secondary education site. And on 14th Street, which is 840 14th Street, here in East Village. We hope you'll stop by during San Diego Design Week. Each evening we have an installation art honoring our students and our families and our teachers and their experience in moving to distance learning and through this experience of a mass crisis. So on March 13th, much like many other places in the world, Urban Discovery Schools closed down. That process was one that found almost 1.5 children around the world being out of school and having no place to go. However, a primary difference for Urban Discovery Schools is we had already taken on a series of design challenges and design sprints several weeks earlier in preparation for school closures. This meant that on Monday, March 16th, Urban Discovery Schools was the only TK through 12 learning institution that was fully online with special education services and able to support our most vulnerable populations. This sparked a lot of interest in terms of design thinking as a crisis response and a way of being. And what we have shared with people is that we brought a team of teachers and students together in order to have some extraordinarily difficult conversations. But part of the conversation was what would happen if you were given a blank slate to design on? And that was a very different question that we're used to dealing with in the social sector. And in the social sector, you're used to having enormous amounts of design constraints around the business model of how you're funded, around what you can do and how services can be rendered, about certifications and teachings and ways of being. And in case of education, some of the practices that we've been engaged in for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And as we've often said, and as something that we move forward in this process of talking about, we believe at Urban Discovery Schools that every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it's getting. However, most public education institutions were not designed to serve all students, and they were not designed to address many of the social inequities that have been in place. So this was an opportunity for us to move and move quickly. It also was an opportunity for us to create an innovation framework for our teachers to move through and be able to engage in so that way they could provide new services. Now, what I would like to share with you is a soundless video that I'll narrate for you of what the results were just as an overview for our students and some of the teachers. So this is just a few of the screenshot sharing of some faces of our students in any given day in terms of what they were experiencing and able to do. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the video and hit share. We hope that will pull up the video and hit share. There it is. Very good.
No, it's not there.
No, it's coming up on my screen. Thanks, son. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, and we're going to start with a quick overview of looking at the lives of some of our kindergartners in a morning check-in meeting as they have to get into a process of getting to know each other. Then we have our students working with middle schools and high school teachers as they go about getting ready for college prep classes, as actually we're some seniors. We continue to run full services for STEM and serving our engineering programs and our arts programs. But we also had our teachers being parents as well, and they would invite their children into the class with them so they could all take part in this process. What we would do during these sessions where we were teaching with kids is we would also take active feedback from students and from parents on an ongoing basis. So we didn't issue a single survey or hold a single town meeting. We did this as an active ongoing process of getting more and more information together. We did design challenges with the students where they would have to deeply explore what they were going through. As you can see, toilet paper was a big deal for the opening weeks. And they would have to get into a process of really exploring their new social sphere and their new world and what was happening. In that, the students were able to deeply connect with each other. And while we have found challenges in terms of social connections and continuing those social connections about social emotional development, we also have found a strengthening of our community as we engaged in that ongoing process or iterative process of design and development and continuing to develop things forward. So rather than looking at a variety of things that had been challenges, we looked at this as an opportunity to advance educational design and social service administration in a way that would better serve our community. Now, it was driven by a crisis, and that crisis is ongoing. But we really took away 4 lessons in order to make this happen. The first was we wanted to move our resources from a place to the space where learning was happening. And that meant pushing resources out our doors, getting computers to kids, items to families, food, whatever people need. The next was recognizing we were in a new communications way of being in structure and really honoring that. The final 2 items were about providing emotional supports for each and every one of our teachers, our faculty, our staff members, and our family members, because we were asking for them to engage in something brand new. And the last piece was to diminish risk aversion to these new ways of being by engaging in a way of constant learning and really looking at growth models for learning in those design cycles. So the results that we have found have led us to believe that even when we return to school, we found new ways of being, learning, and sharing together that really will advance education and our society. So at this time, I would like to do 2 things. First, I'm going to share in the chat window a file from a sketch artist in India. She found some of the information about us and heard some of the interviews that we did with Harvard Graduate School and the case study models that they were doing on Urban Discovery School. And she put together a sketch file that she has welcomed me to share with anybody that would be interested in terms of the Urban Discovery School process for innovation during a paradigm-shattering event. So why don't I do that while we turn it over to questions from the panel?
Thank you very much, Sean. I'm understanding from Cindy, who's helping us from SDDW, that we won't be cut off right at 4 o'clock. It'll be cut off when Elena says she's done, since she is running it. So I do have a question for you, and then I've got a couple more from chat. My question to you is, as the phrase goes, you were building the airplane while it was flying. There's really no resources, unless you tell me differently, for this kind of event that informed you on what to do. How did you work through that?
So the first was to move from a structure of what's called, what is in typical development and paradigm change, from moving from seeking best practice to next elevation of best practice to focusing on what we called emergent practice. And that was very much freeing for everybody. It was the notion and the ability that we were going to be learning in a process of continuous failure and growth back and forth. And to stop the fear factor of innovation paralysis about fearing what was going to happen if you fail, but rather looking at it as what can we learn from what we're doing, what's going right, what can be improved upon. But it had to extend beyond the faculty and staff. It had to also extend to a learning disposition with our families and students, because this was new for them as well. This wasn't just a change for education. This was a change of societal structures. You know, I referred earlier to the paradigm shattering event. That phraseology comes from Thomas Kuhn. And from Thomas Kuhn, he would refer to paradigms in terms of the responsible parties. Well, the responsible parties were all mixed up here, because what the teachers had previously done, now parents were doing, and where the kids had done things. So all the responsible groups were mixed up, and part of that was learning about new community practices and new ways of being. But you had to do that together because it was a new social contract and a new construct.
Thank you. Great answer.
Thank you. Dave, did you collect any questions from the audience?
I did. Is Don or Seda or Elena, do you have any more questions specifically for Sean?
I don't think so. That was amazing, Sean. I don't know how I have witnesses here from how we did at college level. I cannot imagine. That's amazing.
Sean, I will ask one question. Give us an anecdote that you found as sort of humorous during all this. It was a lot of angst and worry and everything, but I bet you found something that was uplifting and quite nice.
Well, we found many uplifting stories, including the way that community forms during crisis and how we come together. In terms of uplifting stories, we have so many to share in terms of families that may have lost their jobs, but then turn that time into times where they would share with other community members their talents and their capabilities in terms of tutoring other students, helping to provide food for others, and supporting one another. One of the things that we found fascinating in terms of things that we found amusing was how ill-prepared we were for an immediate switch to digital workflow and digital cycle solutions, even though we thought we had really prepared for them. And we ended up becoming masterful students of Zoom meeting structures, Google structures, bandwidth battles, all of those things. But to be able to talk about it all at the end of the day and to share it in terms of a process where we could celebrate it, we could laugh, we could gather, and really use humor as the core of a community value that kept us sane and rational at a moment where everything felt like it was falling apart.
Well, good luck, and hopefully it is starting to come back together in some shape. Thank you.
Thank you.
I took down a question from Jordan Hales for Seda at the beginning of this chat as I scrolled down. Seda, Jordan asks, what cities or governments are most interested in the data that you have or can find? And second part of that question, do you have any relationship with the AARP Age Friendly Cities Initiative?
Thank you for those questions, Jordan. So I'll start from the bottom. So we have been very much in touch with AARP. They have an interesting framework around age-friendly cities, and we've definitely used a lot of their data around age friendliness, community building, and all of that to be able to define where we would go within the United States, right? So, and what sort of communities that we want to take this methodology and be able to test it in urban, large metropolitans as well as, rural, and be able to see if the toolkit and the methodology works for, without worrying about the scale or the geographical differences. On the cities and government officials, so it's been an interesting journey about that. I think we have approached some governments or some city officials, but what we have done is it was largely bootstrapped. I mean, we really didn't go down kind of the state side or the city side, but we basically went into communities of senior centers and churches and or synagogues, typically where communities are gathered naturally, even diners and things like that, and kind of went from there, or versus the city and the officials down. And this may sound strange coming from an urban planner, but we really wanted to test out our ability to put ourselves into, well, I'm not associated with city. How would I put this together if I'm just a citizen and if I wanted to do this by myself?
Thank you very much, Seda. Here's a question from Susan Merritt. And by the way, let's all congratulate Susan and Patricia for doing this design week. They were instrumental in it. Susan asks Eric and Stephanie, what were some of the outcomes and recommendations that you found after your designathon?
Well, that's a great question. I think the main outcome, as we mentioned earlier, that was the most impactful regionally was this understanding that designathons are not just a fun little student activity, but a really productive method to gather ideas and regional input on planning problems. Some of the specific outcomes, I think, on campus, Stephanie might be able to speak more specifically to.
Yeah, I think we, one of the biggest outcomes, everyone included like a wayfinding component in their presentation. And I think that that really helped influence how important wayfinding was in anything or connecting the trolley to the heart of the campus.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the designathon, most of the outcomes were like very visionary. And so I think that in future designathons, we tried to have a little bit more of a focused issue for students to focus on so that we could implement more financially feasible projects on the campus. So I think it helped us conduct our future designathons better.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think these are 4 case studies indicative of the type of case studies we want to hear from the participants in this video. We're not just taking it just today. We want to have you think about these stories and publish them to the designforwardsd.com website. I have one question for Andy, if you're still with us, are you?
I am.
Thank you. I'm not sure because I was looking at chat rooms and timers and everything, but Casa Familiar is much more than just what you presented in your short little video. Can you just kind of give us a quick little overview of some of the additional design thinking related initiatives that you're involved with?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of that is happening every day. Constantly trying to figure out, because most of our work in some way relates back to community organizing, and trying to figure out how to get people to coalesce around an issue that matters to them, and also just kind of understand what's available to them. So we're constantly, you know, figuring out how to outreach to folks, how to get them involved, how to kind of deal with the challenges that come with this neighborhood, which in a lot of cases is, you know, pretty extreme levels of poverty and challenges around language and et cetera. And so kind of design thinking is baked into almost everything we do, honestly.
Thank you. Well, we're 1 minute over and we haven't been kicked out yet. So that's good news if anybody has another question. If not, I'll just sort of end it by saying we have a Sisyphean, if that's even a word, rock to push up the hill in order to complete the application to be considered a World Design Capital. So I'm going to lead it to Elena and Dawn for some closing statements.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And so this is the link to the Design Forward San Diego website, and you will see the stories. We can quickly go on the story, and I'd like to have Gabe and Alex and Ryan and Brian, if they are connected, to just say a word. This is a group of recent graduates from New School who helped us in the collection and starting building up this repository of stories that we're gonna grow from now on. So Gabe, are you connected?
Yeah, I'm here.
Ciao. Just
ciao. Hello, everyone.
You want to say 2 words? We have.
Yeah. I'll just wrap it up really quick. Well, first of all, it's just very exciting to be here. It's really cool to hear everyone's stories. And what my team and I have been doing lately has been researching and collecting a few other stories in the San Diego region, while helping the Design Forward Alliance to create a website which collects these stories, and we're going to show these stories, which the website is currently under development.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
So with that said, Tom, maybe we can wrap up. Hey, Don, do you want to say something? I don't know what I'm doing with this screen.
No, I'll simply say that you lived up to our expectations. Thank you. These are 4 stories. They are from very different kinds of work, with very different kinds of people. Now, the one thing about these stories is that there were always professionals in the background. And I just want to emphasize that that is not necessary. We do want stories from professionals. We do want to see what the actual design community, which includes all different kinds of design, is actually doing to make this a better city. But we want to hear what the everyday people are doing. We want to hear what the communities are doing. We want to hear what young kids are doing, what elderly folks are doing, you know, old folks like me. We want to hear from everyday people, because this is what makes it a great city. It's when everybody is doing things for the better. So thank you very much, the audience, and thank you very much, the presenters.
And I want to thank also all the participants and guests. That is people from Tijuana all the way through Nepal attending. So really, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the presenters and the storytellers for today. Thank you to the board of Director of Design Forward Alliance for the support, and hope to hear from you soon.